With a shiny new number one defenseman, new added depth, and their franchise center locked down, the Chicago Blackhawks are ready to go, and Connor's hurt again. With Connor Bedard out for the next 4 months, opening night in Chicago just won't be the same. Holy crap, we're back! It has been a roller coaster ride for Hawks fans ever since the departure of longtime teammates Patrick Kane and captain Jonathan Toews. Their new face of the franchise, Connor Bedard, has already faced some significant injuries. Their general manager seems to have absolutely no sense of direction, and there's no telling just how far this team is from contending again. But I will say this, it's easy to get down on a team that hasn't made the playoffs in 6 years, especially when they used to terrorize the league, but the Chicago Blackhawks have a lot going for them. Starting off with the Connor Bedard extension, based on how quickly the market is rising, this deal will prove to be well worth it for the Hawks. He's improved every year, was above a point per game this past year, and at only 21 years old, Bedard still has plenty of time and potential to grow into one of the league's top offensive players. And joining Bedard in Chicago for the 26-27 season is New York Rangers legend Patrick Kane. People are shaking their heads over giving a 37-year-old Patrick Kane $8 million a year, but he's a franchise legend, still a productive player, and actually a perfect fit for this team. Chicago's power play and offense in general was a sore spot last season. The Blackhawks only had 3 players finish with more than 40 points last season. Bedard with 75, Tyler Bertuzzi with 58, and Frank Nazar with 41. And you may think, well, they're a young team. Of course they didn't blow the doors off offensively last season. All the more reason to bring back the second leading scorer in franchise history. Even if Kane's production really drops off and injuries continue to shorten his final seasons in the NHL, this isn't a move made to make Chicago a contender. He's going to show the young guys how it's done, be the mentor they need following the Nick Foligno trade, and give the fans something to cheer about this upcoming season. The idea of he and Bedard on the same line alone is worth the $16 million. Patrick Kane is a legend. He's back where he belongs. I am happy for you Hawks fans out there. Now, there's just one piece missing. Looking at the rest of the forward group, Chicago is heavily invested in the future of their offense. Between 2022 and 2025, the Blackhawks selected 8 forwards in the first round alone. I'm personally a big Frank Nazar fan and an even bigger fan of Oliver Moore. Moore is a speedy two-way forward who already looks really impressive for a 21-year-old, both defensively and in the face-off dot. Nazar is a more aggressive offensive threat with a ton of skill. And at $6.6 million for the next 5 years, he's going to be a massive steal at that number. Then you've got 19-year-old, third overall pick from 2025, Anton Frundell. Frundell didn't even have to wait a full year after his draft to see NHL ice, suiting up for 12 games and putting up 9 points in Chicago last season. And if those guys weren't exciting enough, let's talk about Russian forward Roman Kantsarov. Do not forget this name. Roman Kantsarov has spent the last 3 years playing for Magnitogorsk of the KHL, and in the KHL, where scoring is not as high as it is in the NHL, especially for young players, Kantsarov finished 9th in the league in scoring last season with 64 points in 63 games, a record for most points in a single season by an under 22-year-old player in KHL history. He also finished first in goals with 36 at just 21 years old. He is the first 21-year-old to lead the KHL in goal scoring since Kirill Kaprizov in 2018-19. He's a smaller forward at 5'9", 176, so he's not Ovi-sized, but size is becoming less and less of a factor in the NHL nowadays anyway. As a second rounder in the 2023 draft, Chicago may have themselves an absolute steal here. You also have Nick Lardis, another 21-year-old third rounder from 2023, who in his first year of pro hockey last season put up 32 points in 35 games in the AHL and 15 points in 41 games with the Blackhawks. It's not hard to tell looking at his numbers. He is a pure goal scorer. Combining his OHL, AHL, and NHL totals, 58% of his career points are goals. On a team with a lot of playmakers and two-way guys, Lardis is a much-needed sniper. 22-year-old Ryan Green, a second-rounder of Chicago back in 2022, was a full-time Hawk for the first time last season. Playing in nearly all 82 games, Green chipped in 29 points and played decent minutes. He's very solid all around and should be a fixture in the Blackhawks' bottom 6 for years to come. They've also got Yeah, Chicago fans, please help me with this one. Sacha Boisvert? Boisvert? You're going to have to let me know in the comments how you pronounce his name. But he was a 2024 first-rounder who made his Chicago debut this past season. Václav Nestrasil, Mason West, and Marek Vanacker, all first-rounders of the last 3 years, each yet to make their NHL debuts. That, ladies and gentlemen, was just the list of young talent this team has. Now, let's look at the vets. Following the departure of Jason Dickinson and Nick Foligno last year, luckily the Hawks still have a few veteran forwards left. Chief among them, Tyler Bertuzzi. I'm glad Chicago kept this guy around. The 10-year veteran played a big role in Chicago last season. He finished with more average ice time than any other forward on the team, not named Connor Bedard, scored a team-leading 32 goals, and he gives those young Hawks someone established to pass the puck to. And at just $5.5 million for the next 2 years, he's a great value player. Teuvo Teravainen has 1 year left at $5.4 million. Now, he saw a massive drop-off in offensive output last year, but he's another guy who at 31 years old can provide stability in the middle six as well as be a very strong two-way forward. He blocks shots, doesn't take penalties, and I'm sure we haven't seen the last of his offensive prowess as he's still a fine passer. Ryan Donato and Cole Smith round out the bottom six, Donato being the more offensive-minded of the two, also took a step back last season with his numbers cut in half from 31 goals and 62 points 2 years ago down to 15 goals and 30 points last year. With decreased ice time and the emergence of a lot of young talented forwards, you can't blame him. But at $4 million for the next 3 years, hopefully he can remain a positive contributor in the bottom six. Cole Smith, who signed a 3-year, $3 million per year contract with Chicago on July 1st, is the one veteran addition to this Hawks forward group. The former Vegas Golden Knight played in 21 playoff games this past year for Vegas and potted 2 goals. At 6'3", nearly 200 pounds, Smith is one of the most physical players in the league. And on a team with a lot of young kids, he will certainly bring some much-needed punch back. And along with his physicality, he's also very strong defensively, now being one of Chicago's best analytically. They also have Andrew Mangiapane, who might play, but probably shouldn't. There is technically another forward the Blackhawks added this past offseason. I didn't mention him yet. I will later. You'll see why. Now, finally, moving on to the defense. Now, I mentioned how Chicago invested a lot of draft capital into their forward core, and so far it seems to be paying off. The same cannot be said of their defense. Since 2019, Chicago has only drafted 4 defensemen with their 14 first-round picks, and of those 4 D-men, only 3 are still in the organization. Sam Rinzel started and ended last season in the NHL with a brief 23-game stint with Rockford of the AHL. He's a 6'4" shot-blocking machine whose offensive metrics are actually very good. Artem Levshinov, the former second overall pick of the 2024 draft, has had a very rough start to his NHL career. Now, I'm not going to pick on him too much. He's still only 20 years old. Being thrust into the NHL at 19, playing big minutes on one of the worst teams in the league, he certainly was not set up for success. Not everyone can be Matthew Schaefer right out of the draft, and he wasn't bad on the Hawks power play, and with some veterans brought in to shelter his minutes a little bit more this year, I'll bet he has a great third year in the league this upcoming season. Lastly, Kevin Korchinski. He's the one that you may not want to place your bets on. In 3 seasons, Korchinski's ice time has plummeted each year since his rookie year. With less and less ice time in the NHL, mediocre numbers in the AHL, we'll see if the 2022 7th overall pick gets another shot with the big club. With how these draft picks have panned out so far, and the plethora of names available at this year's draft, the Chicago Blackhawks have a massive opportunity to take potentially their next cornerstone D-man. Well, that's one way to do it. I have made a few Bowen Byram jokes on this channel leading up to this video, but after a month, I've had a lot of time to let this move sit with me, and no, it's still ridiculous. I fully understand the argument that you never know what you're going to get out of a draft pick. Outside the number 1 pick, and sometimes including the number 1 overall pick, you don't know that that player is going to become a franchise player or even an NHL regular for your franchise. I personally like when teams take the risk of dealing their first rounder for young NHL players because you're essentially trading a lottery ticket for a proven commodity. But with that being said, this was a questionable move, man. I say questionable because we don't know. Bowen Byram may turn out to be Chicago's number one defenseman for years to come. But the problem with that is he's 25 years old. It's no longer a conversation of what Byram could be. He's entering the prime of his career now. I want to make a couple of things clear. I do believe Bowen Byram is a good defenseman, and I'm not against the Chicago Blackhawks for bringing him in. I take issue with how they went about doing so. Bowen Byram is a very skilled, smooth skating defenseman who loves to break the puck out of the D zone. He's averaged 40 points over the last 2 years. He's been a plus player and isn't afraid to block shots. He's not an overly physical player. You won't be afraid to dump the puck in his corner of the zone, but he's very competitive and plays hard. Occasionally, he can be a little bit overconfident with the puck and force turnovers. He's also had trouble staying healthy in the past, but he has been healthy the last 2 years. Overall, he's a solid defenseman. But unfortunately for Byram, he's being paid like a Norris Trophy caliber defenseman. Well, I mean, he's extremely fortunate to be making that money, but that 12.5 number and the fact that he was brought in for the 4th overall pick in a defenseman-heavy draft is why we're having this conversation. Again, I'm not going to sit here and say Bowen Byram is a bad defenseman. He's actually good. The argument and the problem is the Blackhawks just spent a top draft pick and $75 million on a good defenseman. Byram has never led his team in ice time, and by that I mean the D-corps in ice time, of course. And he was only second once. He hasn't yet proven he can be a team's number one D-man. Things will change as his extension doesn't kick in until after this upcoming season, but if you look at that $12.5 million number today, he would be in the top 10 highest paid players in the entire league and the number one highest paid defenseman. That is insane for a player who has never been considered a top 3 player on his own teams. Byram having 1 year left on his deal with Buffalo is really what did Chicago in, because it meant that they just invested the number 4 pick into a player that could potentially walk off the team the following summer. So essentially, they voluntarily forfeited all leverage and allowed Byram to ask for any number he wanted and were practically forced to comply. Unless they fully expected him to command that much money and were willing to fork it over either way. I'm not sure which would be more concerning. And don't let it be forgotten, Chicago also moved a roster player to Buffalo in this deal. Louis Crevier, who was once a 7th round pick of the Blackhawks, worked his way all the way up into the team's lineup, playing 78 games last season and put up 25 points. He also held the best plus-minus rating of any defenseman on Chicago. So they essentially moved a potential top 4 defenseman in the number 4 overall pick, an already established top 6 defenseman, and $75 million for a top 4 defenseman. And they took on Jordan Greenway with no salary retention. Holy crap, man. The reason I went on a bit longer with this player is because I don't believe you can simply chalk this one up to, well, the cap is going up and they needed a defenseman, so this is the price you pay. There are so many other routes Kyle Davidson could have taken to find a top 4 D-man. And at $12.5 million, that is not a number that will simply fly under the radar in a few years as the cap rises. If Byram does not live up to this team's expectation of being a true top pair D-man and power play quarterback, which he's never been, by the way, they're going to be in big trouble. Again, Chicago fans, I would be excited about this player, but his contract could hinder the team's ability to build further and lock up their own homegrown talents once their contracts are up in the coming years. Okay, now I'm done talking about Bowen Byram. On to the next addition to Chicago's blue line, Ian Cole? He's still playing? Well, yes. And pretty well, actually. Ian Cole, for as long as I can remember, has been a very solid bottom pair defenseman who does just about what you'd expect. He throws a lot of hits and blocks a ton of shots, and I mean a ton of shots. He's a 2-time Stanley Cup champion who will certainly help out some of the younger guys Chicago has back there. He can also help out on the PK. I'm sorry, the NHL's second best PK? How the heck did that happen? Anyways, he can help out their PK following the move of Connor Murphy to Edmonton at the trade deadline last season. Continuing on, Wyatt Kaiser, a very, very nearly 24-year-old former 3rd-round pick of Chicago, has become a regular in the lineup and on that unbelievable penalty kill. The young shutdown D-man has had his leash extended each of the last 4 seasons, and I would expect to see him play significant time with either Byram or Levshunov this season. Last and certainly not least, Alex Vlasic, the true face of Chicago's blue line. Vlasic is a guy who came into a bad situation as a young defender, adapted right away, made the most of his opportunity, and never looked back. The Blackhawks anchor on D and on the PK. He is their minute muncher and most reliable player. And at 6'6", with his long reach, skating ability, and poise, Alex Vlasic is not the guy I'd want to play against if I was on the ice. Wrapping up the roster with the goaltenders. Now, I'll keep this one quick because I've kind of gone on a long time with the forwards and the defensemen, but I'm a big Spencer Knight fan. I think he's one of the better young goalies in the league, and with a better team in front of him, I think Chicago found their starter for the foreseeable future. Now, Hawks fans, you may have to help me out with Arvid Soderblom. Personally, I can't say I've seen too much of him, and looking at his stats, well, I kind of wish I wouldn't have. Let me know in the comments if he's better than he looks. Typically in these videos, I focus on the team's roster, their offseason so far, and their future. I'll mention the GM since he's the one pulling the trigger on the acquisitions and the contracts I'm discussing, but I don't address the coaching staff unless I feel a reason to. And in this case I will, because Jeff Blashill has had a less than successful run as an NHL head coach. In 8 seasons behind the bench, Blashill only coached one team to a 90-plus point season, that season being his only playoff appearance as a head coach, in which his team lost in 5 games, over 10 years ago. But he was an assistant coach under John Cooper for a few years in Tampa, and working closely with one of the best coaching minds in the game today, I'm sure he picked up a thing or two. And from what I've read, he's a very smart coach, with his strength being his development of young players, which in Chicago's case is an absolute must-have. The way I see it, he's a good fit as a transitional coach until the team is ready to contend down the road. Speaking of contention, how far away are the Blackhawks, and have they built a strong enough core to see it as a future possibility? I believe they have. They've already done the heavy lifting. They've already stocked up and made their draft selections. They've got their franchise center with plenty of other young talent surrounding him. They've supplemented that youth with veterans who can still play and provide great depth. They've already got a great PK, although they did lose some key contributors, and a power play that will certainly improve with the talent they have. They've got a very promising young D-core and a 25-year-old goaltender who's already shown that he can play. Now, it's all about development, turning that potential, that straw, into gold. I wouldn't look forward to another parade anytime soon, but we may see this team back in the playoffs sooner than later. There is a lot to look forward to this coming fall. Chicago, it's showtime. I hope you all enjoyed, and thanks for watching. Take care.